Hey guys, Igor here, and today we're finishing up this drawing, so let's get right into it. Alright, so here we are in Procreate, and the first thing that I just want to show you guys real quick is I have all my layers here. We have the sketch layer on top, we have an independent layer for the sheep, and then the wolf in the background, as well as the sky, which is just a soft gradient from cyan blue down to a much more desaturated light blue. So let's pop all these back on. I'm gonna grab the topmost sketch layer and lower that opacity. I decided that I'm gonna put my foot down and finally start drawing in a way where time really matters to me. So what I'm gonna do for this video and possibly other videos in the future, maybe not for all of them, is I'm going to speed up most of it and only slow it down and talk about things in real time when I'm doing something specific. But you know, if I'm going through and doing just another ball of fur that I've done, 20 or 30 times on this one painting, I think it'll be more interesting to kind of watch it all happen, and then I explain it once and then just do it the rest of for the remainders. I do it in a faster fashion. Alright, so here we go. The painting is about a wolf in sheep's clothing. Obviously, it's kind of like a classic little story thing. And all I'm trying to do is work on it from far away. I'm trying to make it look good zoomed out. And then the rest should take care of itself. If I feel like I need to go into further detail, I can always zoom in and add, clean up the lines or do whatever else I might find necessary, which is something that I often do, and I have to admit that I often overdo. So a drawing, instead of taking me 4 hours, takes me 16. And then you can imagine I get burnt out on it, and it just becomes... It's one of those things that you want to finish, but you know that it's so far away from being done that that you'll never get the chance to do it. So I'm just gonna fast forward here, and I'll commentate through what's going on, even though it's sped up. And then, like I said, I'll slow it down for those parts that I'll need to more carefully explain things for you guys. So yeah, let's do this. Yeah, that's right. It's me. The drawing's already done, but I'm doing some voiceover commentary. So hopefully now I can speak with a bit more energy and I don't have to focus on two things at once. So jumping right into it, I think I've sped it up like 8 times because these silent parts were still a good 20 minutes. And as you can see, it'll be a lot of doing the same thing, going through and adding darker spots to the wool balls areas, where they're kind of not touching each other, where light would basically kind of is not ever reach. So what I'm doing is I'm going through and just making sure that all the individual fur balls on the wolf itself makes sense, and then as soon as that's done, I'm moving over to the sheep and kind of repeating that whole process. Because the outfit that he's wearing is essentially another sheep, you basically draw the same thing 3 times. And it's not just one of those cases where you can copy and paste. Not only does that often make your drawing look a little bit cheaper, but it also kind of looks forced, it just looks rushed. So redrawing it, good practice, that's why I'm doing it. Adding a lighter tone to the nose of the sheep and any area that might be hit with more light. Drawing in the pupils, and then you'll see me kind of correcting those a bit, especially that one on the right sheep on its left eye. So now I'm removing the sketch layer altogether, which gives me a good enough idea of what the forms are supposed to look like from having drawn in the basic shapes underneath in the fill layer. And now I'm using an even lighter color, hitting the rim lights, using the same brush throughout, hardly touching the opacity slider or the size slider. It's just a lot of kind of repetitive strokes and things, just different colors, different tones, different hues. So yeah, going through doing the nostrils. I wasn't really happy with the nostrils, so I tweaked them a bit, and then I kind of just said, okay, you know, what the heck, let's just keep moving on. Hitting some more of uh, the first spots with a lighter color on top, darker color on the bottom, and softening it out, softening up throughout. Now I didn't blend it too much here, and the reason was the brush that I'm kind of using, the round brush, it doesn't have the softest edges. I could definitely tweak that in the brush setting, but since they're not that soft to begin with, and instead of switching brushes, I can get a good enough look for kind of a basic, thing that I was going for. So I didn't play around with that too much. So yeah, it's a little bit rough. It's not perfectly blended, but all those things, you can touch up if you spend more time with the drawing. So yeah, I'm just cleaning up edges around the shape, the head shape of the sheep, making sure that the shape makes sense. Touching up things like the ears, the eyelids, and just doing a lot of that. I don't really know what else I can really mention that is really critical here. I didn't use any transform tools here. I think I mainly focus on the sheep because the wolf is in a place where I just feel like all he needs is some touch up details and he'll be done. Where the sheep, they're in focus a bit more, or they're a little bit closer to us, and any mistakes that I might leave on them will be a lot more prominent. So you see me fixing up the eyeball and the chin area. And also I'm going to decide to kind of cover up that initial spot where the ear connects to the head with a small patch of fur, because it just doesn't really do it for me. So we're almost done with the little sped up version, and then I'm going to go into some slow explanation of stuff. So yeah, stay tuned for the next sped up part where future Igor talks to the past Igor. Alright, now real quick, I did want to show for those that might be wondering or haven't noticed because of the sped up version, that I have not changed brushes at all for the majority of this painting, at least for the parts that you guys have seen. And the brush that I'm using is the round brush. As you can see, it is not modified. I don't already remember if the tilt stuff was on off, but because I'm using the Apple Pencil, I'm able to kind of manipulate the brush really quickly to whatever situation that I need it for. So in this case, if I'm doing a little bit of rim lighting on the eye, I can lower the size of the brush and just push down a little bit harder to get that more defined edge in there. And that's what I'm probably going to do for the rest of the painting until it comes time to adding little bits of hair to the fur on both the wolf and the sheep. So when I do that, I will be sure to select the brush and show you guys it all in real time. Alright, let's get back into the sped up version here. Alright, just when you thought you could get rid of me, guys, I'm back with more. So here you see me reworking the pupils. The sheep looks like he's a little bit cross-eyed, but that's okay. I fix it eventually. We just want both of them looking like, the eyeballs are turned a little bit more so that he can sense the wolf is behind him. I think one thing I should have added to this painting that I didn't, that if you guys do a similar painting that I would recommend, is saliva. So yeah, here's that little ball of fur that I was talking about over the ear. I feel like it separated the ear a bit, kind of helped place it behind the eyeball, and just in general, less focus is now directed to it. Here, you see me again cleaning up, certain edges, some of the darker colors that are showing through areas where I went over with highlight are still very visible, so I go ahead and address that. Adding quick highlights to the eyeballs. You definitely don't want to keep them flat white or off-white, whatever color you choose. I grabbed some of the background sky color and then hit it with a little bit of a lighter tone. And And I also went back and added an even lighter color to the fur. So I'm going in and making sure that the fur is, it has a good contrast range. You can't just do a lot of white because then it'll be really, really flat. So that's something to consider. And then here we go with real time again. Alright, so here we are with, I guess, what seems like, the final phase. I'm fairly happy with the drawing. Looking at it from like a thumbnail view, I can tell what is what. And I think now it's time to select a softer, maybe more of a mixing brush, and go in here and blend some of the crude lines. So let's take a look. Let's grab the color from this sheep here, lower the opacity, the base opacity just a bit, and raise the brush size. Now softly going in and just getting rid of some of the jagged edges and the darker colors and the very sudden color transformations, going from a bright color to a darker one. I'm just going to go around the eye, basically expressing the contour of the eye a little bit better, and get these cracks where the fur bunches up next to other balls of fur, and it gets a little bit darker, less light gets in there. So what I'm going to do with this fur is I'm going to turn it to essentially soft wool balls, and the final detail will be going in with a pencil-like brush and scribbling in random hairs that stick out every which way. And I've done this, I think, a few times with some paintings, but never really to this extent, because I don't normally draw a lot of sheep, and not only that, if I do, it might be just like one sheep. So here I'm going to grab a slightly lighter color. I just want the wolf to be a separate object from the sheep. I don't want them blending too much. So even though he's not that far away, I'm going to give the sheep a much brighter wool fur coat edge than the wolf itself, so that these two things are pushed further apart. The overlap is a little bit more prominent. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other sheep, but as you can see, since it's not really being covered as much by the wolf, we don't need to do it everywhere. Now let's go back to this sheep in the front right. That's where we're going to probably finish first. So same thing with the eyes, just soften them out. There is a small blending tool. We can use that for a bit if you guys just want to see how it works. And same idea. I'll probably want to lower the opacity just a bit, because as you can see, the smudge tool, that's what it does. It basically just smudges things. It doesn't do as much blending, as you might like. You might drag a color that you don't necessarily want there, all over the area where you're trying to blend. So going along the bottom of the eye, I don't really like that. I'm gonna undo it. The thing is, with blender type tools, you could potentially lose a lot of form if you misuse them. So if you're a beginner, I would say stay away from them completely, and not until you get more used to kind of understanding how and why blended things look the way they do and why they need to be blended. Until then, I say just learn to create that effect, even though it might be a little bit more difficult with just a traditional pencil or brush. And the blending stuff you can experiment with once you are comfortable with those, and it'll just speed things up for you instead of kind of muddying up your drawing. So that's what I would suggest. I basically never use them. I think the last time I used the blending tool was for like my live stream or something, just to show somebody who asked for it. But other than that, I don't use it in any of my paintings, and I haven't used it in any of my recent paintings. At least for the iPad. I'll use it from time to time on the computer. Alright, so here we're going in, just again softening stuff up, but I'm going to leave some of those strokes visible within the face. And I want to do that because I'm not going to give this drawing a completely rendered look since I don't have the time to spend, hours rendering it. I just decided that for basically all my future videos, I'm going to work faster, and then eventually the quality, I'm hoping, catches up with the amount of time that I'm putting in, since I won't have as much time to spend adding needless detail. Maybe for some it's needless. For me, I enjoy that part, but it just makes more sense to, if I have to cut something, that's what it has to be. Alright, so we're moving on to the sheep on the left here, and going through, softening up these fur patches, or wool patches. I think wool is considered fur. Okay. And I don't know exactly how much hours I've already spent on this drawing. It hasn't been that much, but as opposed to the previous one that I did, I posted on my Instagram. Maybe I'll do a playback video of that for you guys, but I've spent too many hours on that one. So I decided, let's get more drawings done and worry less about making them all really pretty, and instead focus on exploring ideas and trying new things. It's just you're gonna learn through repetition and through experiencing different things, and you're way more likely to expose yourself to both of those things if you are drawing a lot instead of being stuck on one drawing for a really long time. So yeah, and then you could argue, yeah, but I'm drawing a lot even though I'm drawing one thing. I'm spending a lot of time doing it. Yeah, but you don't have as much time going through the different stages and problem solving as you would if it was a different drawing. So a lot of the times, one of the most critical parts for me, I think one of the most deciding factors on whether a drawing is good or not, is the initial sketch and kind of the composition, the layout that I create for said drawing. I've actually already done this drawing before, but I didn't like the previous look of it, so I decided to completely redo it. It was an awkward angle. It was kind of boring, and this one, hopefully, you guys like it more. I think it's pretty interesting. It gives us a little bit of understanding of what's going on with the situation without me having to spell it out. It's pretty obvious. Hey, there's a wolf right there. He's not hiding it very well, but the sheep are kind of dumb and oblivious, and they don't care. At least this one on the bottom left doesn't. He's deep in his grass dinner. Alright, so I'm fixing the eye up a bit. For the pupils, as you can see, I didn't go full perfect black, and that is intentional because pupils and eyes in general reflect and bounce and do a lot of things with light. So a full black pupil is very uncommon. Even basically only in a dark situation would it ever go really dark. But if you have any sort of light source, or maybe not even a direct light source, you'll get a lot of bounce light coming in, and it's very important from my experience to vary up dark colors. Even with things like the wolf's nose, even that isn't just plain black. It's got a couple of different grays in there, and the top part is lighter gray to kind of indicate that it's picking up some light from up above. So this eye here, I'm going to zoom in. Hopefully you guys noticed that I've been pretty good about not zooming in like crazy during this whole painting. But I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to erase some of the eyeball underneath the eyelid. And I guess this is what some people might consider, you know, unnecessary detail. But realistically, you know, you gotta, come on, you gotta be civilized after all. Even though this thing is not 100% photorealism, we still follow the laws of form. You know, the eyelid is there to cover the eye, so that's what we're gonna have it do. And then you can use this dark color to really plaster in that eyelid and make it noticeable. We can do the same thing on the other eye, and we could technically make the eyelid a little bit smaller and instead have a cast shadow. Now I could create a new layer and put it in multiply and carefully draw in a cast shadow, but I'm just going to grab a darker tan color here and drop that in right below the eyelid. Let's fix the shape of the eyelid where I kind of messed it up. So yeah, here we have our drop shadow. You can grab a lighter portion of that shadow and very lightly and crudely, I guess, blend it downwards. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then I can even grab this light color, not as bright as the other one, and let's not go that small. And here I'm going to push the reflection a little bit. And let's get some of this eyelid shadow onto the other eyeball. Alright, there we go, very good. Now for the sheep's hide, I would like to get the eyeball or eyelid rim to be a little bit more visible against the wolf. You know, although things don't always have to be 100% separated in real life, if you look at pictures of things, sometimes colors just tend to blend, but because of everything else around those areas, you can still tell what is overlapping what. You know, there's obviously a few illusions or little trick photography things that you can do, but those are rare circumstances. In general, a lot of the things you see, you know, there's very, very simple explanations for why they look the way they do. So you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to overplan it. It's just in this case right now, I'm just trying to fix it up and make it look nice, even without spending, you know, too much time on it. That's the goal. Alright, the wolf, I think even though his fur could be cleaned up somewhat, I'm going to keep him a little bit more loose. And now let's pick a good color for our, I think the 6B pencil might be okay for our fur. Let me see what it looks like. No, I don't like it. Let's do the HB modified. I'm not really feeling that one either. I don't like that the varying opacity isn't very varying. Let's see if I put this one in a larger size. So yeah, see here, pressing down lightly does vary up the opacity, just not that much. Let's go to the different inks and see if we can find one that we like. Don't like that one either. The technical pen might have to do. If I lower its opacity. Yeah, see, the thing is it keeps just one solid opacity. So to change that, I think what I need to do is, oh, there's softness. That's pretty cool. Maybe we'll make it a little bit soft. The dynamic would be, so the opacity variance. Alright, let me just fast forward this and then I'll get back to you when I figure it out and I'll explain what I did. Okay, I think I found it. So basically only under the pencils tab. This other stuff, even though I've messed around with it a little bit, the dynamic, nope. Under the pencil tab for pressure, if you want the stroke to be affected with the opacity to be affected with each stroke, then you have to change up the settings there. So that's what I did. Now if I press really lightly, as you can see, it goes light, and then when I push down harder, it goes dark, or it becomes less opaque. Now the only problem is I feel like the color underneath, the opacity is just, it's there. I think it'll do. Again, we're trying to go for how quickly we can get this done. So I'm going to create a new layer, and the reason that I'm creating a new layer is we are going outside the bounds here. We no longer need to worry about staying within our little drawing area. Okay, I don't really like how that looks. I have to play around with this a little bit more. Let's see if I can find something that I like a bit more. Opacity is at maximum. I actually don't want the size of the pencil to change up, and let's make it more rough. Now for the stroke itself, I guess that's fine. Let's try this one out more. Now, adding these little hairs, to save time, I'm probably only going to do it around the edges where said hairs might overlap whatever object they are near. And that is, again, to save time. If I really wanted to, I could go and use, darker colors and kind of go in and help separate objects like that. But using lighter colors and going over the darker areas will basically gain you that same look with slightly less detail, but overall the idea is the important thing to get across in almost any painting. If the idea sucks, then you don't really have much to show. So that's what we're focused on here. And, this isn't even necessarily the most clever idea. I'm just presenting it in a way that, I find humorous. Just like a wolf that's dressed up in a ridiculous sheep outfit where you can clearly see that, he's just a wolf. And, that's how I chose to do it. So for these areas back here, I need to make sure that I grab the proper color. I clearly need to mess around with the brushes a bit more because I feel like I don't have a solid palette of brushes that I use, if that's the correct term, just a tool set. So I might in the near future, like on a weekend or something, just play around with that for a while, and when I'm happy with it, maybe I'll release it for you guys, obviously for free. I feel like, selling brushes is kind of like one of those things where unless you're selling some really high quality custom made ones, it's probably, I don't know. But basically, yeah, I'll try and work on some brushes. If I play around and find things that actually work well, then, why not? Alright, so again, just hitting the edges here and there. I feel like I want the stroke to be larger in size, but you can't go under... Oh, there we go. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's a bit larger. It's just a larger brush allows you to get stuff down faster. That's kind of what I was going for, is to just put down as much of the different areas and different things that I know that I want to do in the painting, and then later on, if I have the time, come back to it and clean them up and make them look nice. So that's sort of the step I took. And previously, in many of my other paintings, I would just have a rough stage everywhere, and then I would go through and add sections of highlights and shadows and color and detail piece by piece, instead of working, zoomed out and then zooming in and adding detail to only the areas that actually needed it. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that, what I was doing is the wrong way of doing it. It's just a less efficient way, and it yields a different result. So I'm not bashing on the style that I did, and it's not like I'm converting, oh, that's it, I'll never draw that other way. Maybe I won't over time, but again, it's just what is your purpose for doing what you're doing. I've had drawings that I enjoyed working on so much that I'm like, okay, I don't even want to switch to a different drawing, because this is really fun, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. And then I've had drawings where, many that I haven't finished, where I just decided, this isn't going exactly where I had envisioned, and I have other ideas that I just really want to try. So it's whatever you decide. All right, the fur looks good enough, From far away, it looks furry. It looks huggable and squeezable, and that's what we want to see from our sheep. I'm gonna grab some slightly lighter colors and just hit some edges here and there to kind of show that that fur picked up some light. Everything has to do with shading and lighting. That is probably the most important thing. You can have some crappy line art, you can have some messed up forms, but if your lighting is on point, that object will look, as many might put it, dank. Alright, so we've got, let's quickly show you what the layers are. Here's the difference, in the fur. Pretty good. I like it. Now we'll do the same thing for the other sheep. And we've spent, I don't know, maybe about 20-15 minutes or so on the left sheep doing the detail fur alone, which is quite a bit of time. I guess this might be a long video, as many of mine are, but hopefully, you guys can learn something about the process and, what it takes to, or what it could take to complete a drawing. I did start sort of 60 or 70% of the way through on the drawing. I started recording this, but I do have playback videos, and I'm actually just gonna have the playback video maybe play alongside on the bottom corner or something, and then you guys can see how it came to life. So yeah, let's do that right now. We'll start it right now. So if anyone who's still watching, they watched to this far, they might be interested, and I'll just show you how it came to life. And I'm not sure, but you might even see me trying a few different angles, because I always tend to do that. I have this artist Nikolai. He does a lot of work in Procreate, and Procreate hires him to do a lot of the art pieces, and I bought a course from him. And one of the things that he was talking about was setting up thumbnails, and he made like a block of 9 squares, all just a resized canvas into smaller blocks, and then divided it into 9 squares so that all of them would fit the canvas perfectly once he bumped up their size, once he was happy with how they looked. And I've tried that actually on my last painting, but I didn't even need 9 examples. I kind of just figured, okay, I like this composition a lot. And I wonder if that's something that I should try more often. It makes sense, since I have, let's say an idea for a painting, and I don't even take the time to explore a couple of different angles or perspectives for it. I think breaking it down into squares and doing that later would be pretty great. I might even do that, just show that process in a separate video. Or maybe make that a video of its own so that it's not too long. I don't know. I guess just let me know, what you guys might want to see. There's just already so much like really great content and tutorials out there that I'm kind of trying to think of something slightly different, to offer you guys. I know, a lot of people were saying, maybe not even a lot of people, but people were saying we like the whole in-depth Procreate specific content that I have, and I like it too. I want to keep that up. Procreate is a program that I kind of grew up with essentially as an artist, especially. So I would definitely like to keep supporting it and creating content that's relevant to the program. But at the same time, I want to show you guys things that that are just interesting and fun to watch. Okay, cool. Here we're going through, adding a little bit of dark areas to the fur. I guess I'm just going to do the rest of this video in real time because why not? We already kind of skipped through a lot of the boring parts. The details are what's really going to make it come together. For the eyeballs, I'm just going to leave them as is. I will grab this same pencil gray, which is going to add a nice little texture to the ear. And then I'm going to grab this brighter rim color to just make that ear a little bit softer. Okay. And to ground that ear underneath this patch of fur a bit better, I'm going to use a darker color on the fur. I could still probably be tweaking a lot of the highlights and all of that throughout the piece, but we don't have time for that. So here's this layer of fur. As you can see, the edges right here, when I toggle it off, they're really sharp, and then with the extra fur that I went in and added, now it's a lot softer. Changes kind of the whole dynamic of the sheep, and that's the idea. So now we're going to create a new layer for our little wolf in the background, and we're going to use these slightly brighter colors to hit the edges here. I think in this drawing you'll even see, or you've already seen in the playback video, that I was trying to add teeth, and then at one point I decided, alright, that looks way too vicious. Like the sheep look too adorable to suddenly have some like freaky looking wolf right in front of them. So, there's decisions that you need to make. What kind of theme and what sort of visual style are you going for? And sometimes things you just got to be okay with saying, yeah, that doesn't work this time. Maybe I can do another painting. You could do like a series of fairy tales, and maybe even one fairy tale in like 6 different styles. That'd be actually pretty cool. Imagine doing like Little Red Riding Hood, where one of the versions is like a super gory, detailed, I don't know, depiction of that classic tale, and then other versions might be a lot more lighthearted. But then again, that's pretty hard if you have one style that you're used to. I probably wouldn't really recommend trying it. I'm just thinking that it might be pretty cool to see. It might be cool to see multiple artists attempt to kind of recreate a classic tale. Yeah, that would make a lot more sense than having the same guy try to copy a bunch of different styles. Although I'm sure there are people that are more than talented enough, that are super flexible and are able to do just whatever you tell them to. Alright, so here it's important to switch to a slightly darker color if you're doing undersides of the wool balls. So yeah, keep that in mind. You don't want to go straight white. It's going to look weird. The wool underneath is obviously not getting as much lighting, so therefore it's not going to be as bright. You could even add a few darker hairs in the light parts to kind of indicate that it might be hair at the bottom parts of the fur. Not everything has to be followed by a formula. That's why I hesitate to show you guys tutorials that say exactly how to draw something, because let's be honest, even I don't really know what I'm doing. It's just I'm kind of going with my gut, and I'm working at the drawing until it feels right to me. So personally, I prefer the dynamic approach. I feel like it gives me an advantage to not necessarily know exactly how to draw something, but having an understanding of how things should look so that I'm able to draw a lot of different things. Somebody asks me, can you draw this? I'll say, yeah, I could. Give me enough time and I'll definitely be able to draw it. Or can you draw that? Yes, I could. I don't specialize in it, and it might not be as good as somebody who does draw that stuff a lot, but I most certainly could draw it. So I want to encourage people to kind of follow that mentality, because I feel like it'll make you a much more versatile, flexible artist. But then again, specializing in stuff is really good too, so I have nothing against that. I feel like specializing, can land you a job that, otherwise you might not get, because you are not as good in that specific thing. But specializing in what sense, right? If you're landing a fashion job, you better know how to draw humans really well, but you also have to learn how to draw different textures of clothing, and how to do, you still have to have, good fundamentals when it comes to maybe being able to draw dynamic poses and things like different light settings. I don't really know, but you get what I'm saying, right? A lot of it is just understanding the fundamentals and really being able to kind of bend the rules to your own style and your own needs. All right, the fur is looking super furry. As you can see, a lot of scribbles and a lot of random lines are what's making it possible, and the only reason that is the case is because we're using kind of like the idea that there's a light source, and it's lighting up the areas on top, and the areas down below are getting less light, so they're not as bright, and that's what's making it possible. Same concept would apply if you're working with just a pencil and piece of paper. I would just do darker strokes on the bottom, and I would leave the top white. But if I already drew the top portion in a little bit lighter, I would even go in with a jelly roll pen, and I would add highlights to the fur. Do what you got to do to have that balance of contrast from light to dark. If your drawing feels a bit flat, it's probably because you didn't push the contrast enough. And if you did push the contrast, maybe you pushed it too much. Maybe it's really dark. So it's just a few, minor things that a lot of people could tweak, and then their drawings, I think, would see huge improvements. All right, we are going to finish up the fur here, and then lastly, I do want to touch up the nose and the short fur around it. I feel like that it looks a little bit bland, and I also have to add the whiskers. I almost forgot. Now, I don't remember if sheep have any whiskers. I don't think they do. Their mouths do a similar T-shape, upside down T-shape that a wolf or a dog might have, but I guess I won't worry about it. You can't really see their whiskers. If you could, it would be like that bottom right sheep there. All right. Now, as a kind of off-topic thing, I do have other apps that I've downloaded that I never really got to test and play around with long enough to be able to give you guys solid feedback on them as alternatives to Procreate. But I think that's another thing I'm interested in doing in the near future is Adobe, I know, is planning on releasing a new sketch app. Their current one I've used a little bit, but I have not even finished a single actual drawing in. I know their new one has a couple of features that should make it, a little bit more user friendly and maybe even make it really, really good. So yeah, look out for that. I think in the near future we're going to do a couple of product reviews or software reviews. No, not to mention Adobe's drawing app is free, which is pretty awesome. So if your parents or something don't allow you, to pursue your art dream, be sure to download one of those and try it out. Draw something, show them, impress them. Alright, the fur is furry. The ears, however, are not. So just little things that I'm missing. But as you can see, I feel like I'm not spending that much time on it, which feels good because I spent a lot of time finishing up my astronaut and dog drawing from the other day. Oh man. Alright, so we're just gonna grab a slightly lighter color to push that kind of flat gray on the ears. Push it outwards a bit, make it a bit more interesting, give it some form. We're going to grab an even lighter color and just a few brighter things of hairs here and there. Alright, if I planned better, I probably would have some sort of cast shadow down there, but I think it's fine. Let's just say that that little ball of wool is further forward. And I do want to fix this part right here where it would be overlapping. Alright, grab that sort of medium grayish tan color. Just fix that up. Okay, and what did I say I was going to do? I was going to do the whiskers and the nose. So for the nose, we can actually go with a brighter highlight. So let's increase the size on this thing so that we can get a little bit more of a precise color. And again, all you do that is you pinch in and out. For those that I just blew their minds with that little thing. I think I may have found it out on accident. I don't remember. I don't recall if somebody showed me or not. Alright, and finally, I'm going to draw the whiskers in. So, let's grab a black color. We're going to lower the size of the brush a bit. Let's see if that's good. And because I'm such a pro at tweaking my little app stuff, we're going to go to pencil, and we're going to taper that size with pressure. So let me see if this does it. Oh, as you can see, it tapers it, but it tapers the wrong side. Yeah, so we're gonna do that. Let's get these sides up here. Wait a minute. It's not dragging at all. There we go. Don't really like that. Alright, I'm just gonna put down the initial what are they called? Hair follicles. Make it a little bit darker, and then drag my hand outwards, creating the whiskers. I don't like how uniform they are. Especially that one is just like super straight. Get out of here, straight whisker. Sometimes you want them overlapping a bit. It Gives you more of a sense of, hair growth. Don't like that either. Alright, for this part, I don't think it's too bad if I zoom in and do them manually. Now, general, and in general, we want the max size. Probably drop it down a bit. I'm happy with having the larger size for the fur. And as you can see when I zoom in, the fur looks not so good. But who cares if it doesn't look that good up close? Nobody artificially zooms their eyes in. Just we're able to do that with the power of computing and stuff. Alright, so here we're just, again, looking for somewhat interesting shapes for our little whiskers. Make some hairs darker than others because they might be thicker, or they might be closer to us. I don't know. You can vary up size, shape, all of that good stuff. I mean, it's whiskers, for crying out loud. Like, nobody's gonna completely criticize your drawing on the whiskers alone unless you do some really weird things. I think I did have a person on Reddit once. They were like, hey, you forgot to draw the whiskers in. And then I realized only a bit later that they were right. Alright, here we go. I think this one will have it kind of go downwards. No, I don't like that. And I kind of don't want it covering the tongue. Although the tongue, I feel, is a little bit cheesy, almost. Like, I kind of don't even want a tongue. But at the same time, I'm already too committed. We're leaving the tongue in. It's tacky, but you know what? Who said tacky can't be not cool? Everybody says that. That's why tacky things are kind of never really a compliment. Alright, I feel like all of a sudden my brush is just a little bit too small. So let's go back to general and bump the size up. Oh yeah, it went down to 8%. What is that all about? Or does it have something to do with my pencil dynamic thingy? Oh yeah, it does. It does indeed. Alright, I still gotta get the hang of what setting does exactly what, so then I can break it down and accurately explain to you guys, instead of, just sending a bunch of people to kind of go and destroy their brush sets. Luckily, you can always undo and restore to factory settings. Where that is, I don't remember, so please don't ask me. I will probably do a more in-depth guide and talk about all that in the future. Alright, I've spent way too much time doing the whiskers, but basically, guys, we are done here. I'm not gonna go too crazy into this drawing. Tomorrow is May the 4th, so I need to do a Star Wars painting. I think it's time. Gotta do one annually, and usually I love spending a long time working on the Star Wars stuff, but since I have to get it done tomorrow, probably won't be the most detailed thing. Alright, finally, I think we're gonna add a highlight to the nose. It just seems fitting. Right? Ding. And that's gonna make the nose pop, and that's the first thing that people are gonna look at, which I love. So here's the before and after. Oh, I just noticed something. Did you see that? Every once in a while I'll get these wild little marks from, palm rejection failing or something like that. Alright, so here is the before and afters. I think it looks pretty good. I'm gonna sign the drawing with my initials and the year that I did the drawing. That's kind of how I keep track. And there we go. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I hope you at least enjoyed my random commentary. And stay tuned for more videos in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and stay cute.